Since this is the first video review I've done where I'm a fan of a certain material, I thought I should do a little explanation first. I'm reviewing something where I'm a fan of the source material. I split the review up into two sections. A critical review where I review the movie or video game or whatever as a, mostly movie, as its own thing, whereas just a normal moviegoer without knowing the source material. And then I do a fan review where the fanboy, me, as me, reviews the movie as a fan and says whether or not the fan likes it or not. And with that fan review segment, I will admittedly do spoilers, because I want to talk about certain things in there that I liked or disliked. So, let me give you a few examples. Since this is a review for Resident Evil Retribution, I probably give you examples with the other movies. So, here is a critical review of Resident Evil 1 for you. Resident Evil. Resident Evil has a good story. It was a good movie. It was kind of like a George A. Romero movie in a way. It was set in a home. It had a good horror, a lot of good scares in it. A lot of good scares. Good costumes. It was actually very scary at times. I was very impressed with it. It seemed like a little independent movie in a way, and not sometimes independent horror movies kind of get too cheesy. But yeah, this one was actually really good. And I liked Milla Jovovich. She was really cool. She was fun to watch. The gore was good, although it wasn't like not like George A. Romero style. Well, it's like Splatterfest or anything, but it was pretty cool. The monsters were very interesting. The zombies were cool. Yeah, I really liked it. It was good. I'd give it a 3 stars. That was pretty good. I wouldn't mind seeing a sequel from it at all. And now here's the fanboy review for Resident Evil, the first film. That was for a fan of that the game series. That was actually a pretty good movie. Okay, yes, granted, it didn't have Jill Valentine, Chris Redfield, Brad Vickers, Albert Wesker, or any of the Star's team members from the games. This was more of an interpretation of the series, kind of like when movie makers adapt comic books. They create their own stories, sometimes characters, but they use main characters. So all the characters in this one were made up. It was still interesting. It had the spirit of the games. It had the survival horror aspect of it. I liked how they created the T-virus and the little tubes, the little DNA spiral in there. I thought that was pretty cool. And they had the same setting with the mansion and the Umbrella facility below, though it was mostly in the Umbrella facility. That was pretty cool. Zombies were great. Although granted, they didn't have a tyrant for the main boss battle or any hunters or any other strange creatures. They just had the liquor from the second game. But even though that was still pretty cool. They had little nods to the game as well, like they had to get out there in 3 hours to, which is before the place blows up, which in the game, if you beat in 3 hours, you get a rocket launcher, which was pretty cool. They had the train from the second game in there too, which was pretty cool. They had a Red Queen, which is a reference for Code Veronica, which is pretty cool also. Even though, yes, it wasn't the game, it was good. I actually enjoyed it. Like I said, it caught the spirit of the game. It made you, made you like it. And it opened up for a sequel that was like her walking into Raccoon City, devastated. It's empty, it's trashed, and it's like, ooh, the zombie apocalypse has started in Raccoon. T-virus has spread everywhere. I was like, oh man, I so want to see a sequel to see what they'll do with that. So yeah, that was pretty cool. I would definitely like to see it. So. Now we go to the critical review of Resident Evil Apocalypse. Alrighty then. Critical review of Resident Evil Apocalypse. Okay, I'll admit this one was good, but not as good as the last movie. This one seemed kind of a bit let down in some areas. I'll get to those in a second. But the story was good. It's always cool to see zombie apocalypses in major cities. Characters were interesting. It was good to see Milla Jovovich as Alice again. That was cool. I'll bet this was also a bit more action-y than the last one, but for a sequel they do bigger stuff, so it was alright. Some good humor, but I felt that I forget what the character's name is, but he's the African-American character with the the gold pistols. kind of seemed a bit, kind of cheesy and hokey a little bit. It was like he was funny, but it was like, was he kind of necessary? I know he was like the plucky comic relief, but it just didn't seem to fit what was going on. The monster of Nemesis was interesting. That was pretty cool. Kind of a badass there. Although I will have to admit, the final fight with him was a big letdown. I mean, could have been like this huge, monster fight with one of the main characters and gun shooting, whatever. It would have been epic. But it went to a fist fight. It was just a letdown, and how it was killed was just like another letdown. It was just like, really, it got taken down by that? What? It wasn't all that great. But what was it? It much like the last one. It had some good scary moments. It was very tense at some points. But just like I said, it was a bit more actiony than it probably should have been. But it was a city. They got a lot more bullets and whatnot, so it was understandable. But it opened up for a third one, and I wouldn't mind seeing a third one. It would be interesting. I just hope it was a little bit better than this one. But yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing a third one. So, okay, the fanboy review for Resident Evil Apocalypse. I'll admit this one wasn't as good as the last one. It seemed less survival horror and more action oriented, which is kind of understandable, because like I said in the critical review, it's more. It's a bigger budget, bigger, it's a sequel, so everything has to be bigger. But it was good to see actual characters from the game in this one. They had Jill, Carlos, Nikolai. It was pretty cool. However, it's just kind of disappointing seeing Nikolai as a good guy instead of a bad guy as he was in the game, which kind of was like, you had an interesting storyline that could go there, but no, never mind. I liked that they got to pick Carlos. I always liked that actor. It was pretty cool to see him as Carlos. Jill seemed a bit butch to me. She seemed less of a strong woman and more of a guy, which kind of irked me a little bit. And it was like, okay, but all right. But it was all right. It was doable for the movie at least, but it was still kind of irked me a little bit. Just like I'm not seeing a woman here. I'm seeing a guy. That's kind of, but the major disappointment, although it was cool at first, but it became a disappointment, was Nemesis. At first he seemed like really cool, like badass. He's like, oh cool, real monster. It was like he was kind of being a nuisance, like he was in a game, and then all of a sudden on the final battle, what does he do? He drops his guns and fist fights Alice. What the fuck? And it was a cheesy fight scene. It was like, that was just could rip her in half. What the hell are you doing? It was just disappointing. And then you pity him because he ends up being one of the characters from the last movie. And it was like, no. All right. If you didn't know the game, it was all right. And kind of seemed all right to me, being from the point of view of a normal moviegoer, but it just kind of took away from Nemesis a little bit, the fear of him. Because if you remember for the game, every time you heard his theme music or there was a slight hint of it, or you heard his roar, you're like, ah, shit. You wanted to run. You didn't want to stay and fight this guy. You wanted to run. And then later on, he gets killed by a chopper crashing into him. Stupidest way to kill that monster. I mean, seriously. Just chopper crashes into him and he's dead. In reality, this guy could have just flung this thing off of his shoulders like a fly. What the hell? The chopper should have just slowed him down, if anything. But whatever. I mean, seriously, that at that point I was like, sheesh. I played an even better Nemesis. And yes, that was me in costume at my local GameStop for the midnight release of Resident Evil 5. I've also done it for Resident Evil Raccoon City. But that suit was mainly used for a sequel to our Resident Evil fan film that some friends and I made. But that sequel isn't going anywhere. But if you haven't seen the Resident Evil movie, I'll probably put some links in the description for you to click onto. All right then. But continuing on, uh, overall, as a fan, Resident Evil Apocalypse was good, just not as good as the last one. I didn't fully grasp the spirit of the games, since this was a combination of 2 and 3. But it was okay, I'll admit. It was slightly a bit of a disappointment. Like the last one, it had some nods to the original games, which I liked. It had a little segment to reference Code Veronica, which was kind of interesting. And it opened up for a sequel, so we'll see what happens. I just hope it ends up being a little bit better. So, let's move on to Resident Evil Extinction. Thank you for watching part 1. Part 2 is up. You can either, look on, there's either a hyperlink around on the screen, or you can go to the link below. Okay? In the description, there should be a link. Okay. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.